We're going to be talking about the logo design process as well as tips for an effective logo design. As mentioned, a good logo is distinctive, appropriate, practical, graphic, and simple in form. It conveys the owner's intended message. You should follow the 5 principles here in the next slide to ensure that your design meets all of these criteria. So we talked about this. Keep your logo simple. Keep your logo memorable, timeless, versatile, and appropriate. We're going to look at each of these principles as we go forward. So simple. Simplicity makes a logo design easily recognizable, versatile, and memorable. Good logos feature something unexpected or unique without being overdrawn. This is the design challenge. So how can you create a logo that's simple yet not boring and memorable? Memorable. Following closely on this principle of simplicity is that of memorability. An effective logo design should be memorable, which is achieved by keeping it simple yet appropriate. Timeless. An effective logo should be timeless. Will your logo stand out the test of time? Think about this. Ask yourself, will it still be effective in 10, 20, or 50 years? Probably the best example of a timeless logo is the Coca-Cola logo. This is something that has stood the test of time. If you go back and actually look at the evolution of the Coca-Cola logo, it pretty much aligns as well as far as what you see on the slide. It pretty much veered off a little bit, but has stayed true in terms of typography, color, etc. Versatility. An effective logo works across a variety of media and applications if it's versatile. For this reason, logos should be designed in vector format to ensure that they scale to any size. Ask yourself, is this logo still effective if it's printed in one color? Is it still effective if printed in a reverse color? So for example, if it's a light logo on a dark background, will it still be readable? If the logo is printed at the size of a postage stamp, is it still effective? What about if the logo is as large as a billboard? Would it still be effective? So one way to create a versatile logo is to begin designing in black and white. This allows you to focus on the concept and shape rather than the color, which is subjective in nature. Also keep in mind printing costs. The more colors you use, the more expensive it will be for the business over the long term. And then we have appropriate. So how you position the logo should be appropriate for its intended audience. For example, a childlike font and color scheme would be appropriate for a logo for a children's toy store, but not so much for a law firm. So it's important to state that a logo doesn't need to show what a business sells or offers as a service. For instance, car logos don't need to show cars. Computer logos don't need to show computers. The Harley-Davidson logo isn't a motorcycle, nor is the Nokia logo a mobile phone. A logo is purely for identification. For further evidence of this, if you look at the top 50 brands of the world, 94% of logos do not describe what the company does. All right, so as we go forward, I just wanted to share a resource that I think is definitely helpful that you can bookmark. And this is from designhill.com. And it talks about logo development, 10 things to consider when creating a company logo. A lot of the information in here in this article talks about what we've gone through before, about researching your client's business when you start, avoiding the trends, creating logo in black and white first, and then it just kind of explains in detail about each one of these tips. Make it scalable so it's versatile. Think differently. How can you make your logo stand out and be memorable yet simple? Adopt a minimalistic approach. So this is a good a good read for what is related to what we are going over to make an effective logo design. Let's talk about the design process. And we reviewed this in past videos, but I want to review it again, just showing you a different process as far as a different project process. So the design process that we spoke of before starts usually with a design brief, and that's typically what they call phase one. Once the design brief, once you sit down with a client and are given the task and the problem at hand, and you're gathering the information needed to go forward to phase two, which is research and development, you're going to go out and research your competitors, the target market, and more about the brand that you're designing for. And then it goes into phase three. So this, again, can be several different ways that you want to go about this as a designer. This is the brainstorming phase. This is the fun part of what we do as designers. And everybody does it differently. I start off with word lists, as I stated before. So starting off with a word list for me would be one of the first things that I would do. You could do mind maps. You could do what if the logo or brand were a animal, some crazy ideas. Get it all out there. You can get collaborative ideas, get other people to come in and start brainstorming with you, jotting down ideas. So this is phase three. This is my word list, for example. Mind maps are a great way to also come up with ideas that you may not have at first. So putting into that middle area there of the mind map is basically what you're trying to research more about. And in this instance, it's talking about promote literacy, because I was creating a logo that promotes, reading. So off of this, I branch off into some of the important elements of what the brand's about, and then branching off into another sector of ideas that come into my mind when I think about this. And what's interesting about this is when you get to, those different branches from the mind map, you may start thinking about different things that you might not have thought about at first. So this is a really neat way to come up with more interesting ideas, more concepts very quickly. And then you start with your ideas as well. You can start doing research of logos of other brands, maybe similar to yours, competitor brands, that you want to align yours to. Maybe you're inspired by the color, the typeface, the overall style, the look, and you're gathering those ideas together to brainstorm and be inspired by. Start looking at different typefaces that would align also with with the company that you are designing for. Not just one, but try 4, 5, 6 different ones. You can hone in on them that you think is the stronger of all of them eventually, but pick ones that you can kind of play around with if you have a word mark, it would be with the mark itself. Combination mark, it would be with a mark. If it's just a word mark, it would just be the name. So you would just definitely be holding true to the font of choice. And this all comes to play into a mood board too. You can gather all this information and place it into a mood board where you're showing different fonts, different colors, different imagery, moods that you kind of want to create for this particular project. And then it goes into your sketching and thumbnails. And again, this can be loose at first and then going into a more refined thumbnail. And this process typically isn't shown to the client just because they get a little confused sometimes. There are some that can get it, but you really kind of want this to be for you so that you're not being hindered by the software at hand before going to the computer. So you're getting out some ideas just quickly on paper, and then kind of honing in on that as you go forward. And then you're kind of, once you do get to the point where you have a couple concepts that you want to go forward with, going into Illustrator and starting to create your logos. Again, going through that process of weeding it down to 3 logos to show the client. And then the 5th stage is production, producing the actual the logo or whatever stationary item that you have the logo on, launching the logo if it's on a website. So that's the process again. Another thing to consider is knowing your audience. That's really, really important when it comes to effective logo design too. You need to know your target audience inside and out. Your logo design is not for you, more on that later. It's for your target audience. So it's important that you take the time to identify your target audience and relay that information to your chosen, relay this information visually with your actual logo mark. How do you identify your target audience? Well, people fit into one of 4 categories when it comes to analyzing your audience. The person that pays you, the person that influences the person to pay you, your supporters, and your detractors. The first person on the list, the person that pays you, should be your key focus, followed closely by the people that influence them to pay. And personally, I'd ignore your detractors. Negative energy just isn't worth the effort. Think about who it is that pays you and who influences them to pay you. Then open up a new document and start making notes. Include things like name, age, gender, job role description, hobbies, and interests, almost like a profile of sorts. Start by listing out your existing clients in this format and then progress into creating made-up personas. You need to go into great detail. And I often find when creating personas that finding an image of the person online and adding it into my documents really helps me. How to put your personal taste aside. Our role as a designer isn't to create something that pleases the client. It is to create something that our clients' customers can get behind and what to buy into and want to actually buy into. Personal taste often creeps into logo design in the form of color. It's not often we have a client that has a preference of font, but color is often commented on. If your favorite color is pink, that's great. But you are creating leather jackets for 40 to 60-year-old Harley Davidson riders. So my advice, keep the color pink as far away from your brand as possible. Sure, that's an extreme example, but consider the meaning behind certain colors and try to put your personal taste aside. A lot of banks and big financial companies use the color blue as it represents trust. Red signifies passion and excitement, but be careful because it also represents anger. It's best to keep your personal taste as far away from design projects as possible. Think with your head and not your heart, and you'll be heading down the right path to an effective logo design. Think about the logo printing in one color. This is one of the techniques used to create a timeless logo. If it works as one color whilst still communicating a concept, you have a strong and effective logo design. Does it still work printed in reverse color? For example, white on black rather than black on white. Sometimes your logo will be reversed out, so check it both ways. See if it works. Does it work as the size of a postage stamp or a social avatar? More often than not, your logo will be seen as people scroll through their social feeds. Will it work as large as a billboard? On rare occasions, your logo is seen at scale. It needs to look as sharp and crisp as it does when it's smaller. Does it work with and without typography? Often your logo will become isolated from the wording that accompanies it, so it is important that both work in isolation. Keep reviewing the core principles that we talked about before to familiarize yourself with what makes an effective logo design, and you can revert back to them. You can always use it as a checklist too. Okay. Apply your new logo design correctly. This tip is a reinforcement of something we've talked about throughout as well, about versatility. Versatility is key when it comes to creating an effective logo. So think about all the different situations your logo could be seen. At the top of your website, in print and stationery, on promotional items and marketing materials, on vehicles, in email signatures, across social platforms, on exterior shop signage, and among other products on a shelf. And that's nowhere near a complete list. So basically your logo needs to work, 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter and by 1,000 centimeters by 1,000 centimeters. It's really a crazy world we live in. Most of your brand interactions will come through a device such as a tablet or phone, and that's why it's important your logo design can adapt. It's a good idea to separate your logo mark from your typography or font choice. It's also useful to have both horizontal and vertical lockups of your logo if possible. That way you can cover as much ground as possible without having to create unique designs for every single situation. Look at Asana's logo, for example. Having a logo that works both horizontally and vertically will massively increase the effectiveness of your logo. Because of its versatility, there are a few occasions on which you need to tinker with. This means your logo design is consistent across a variety of platforms. And consistency helps to grow recognition. As we conclude, logo design isn't a one-size-fits-all type solution. It's not cheap. Design is an investment for your business and should be viewed as such. Creating an effective logo should be left to the professionals. Effective logos are key to the success when trying to build brand recognition and loyalty. I wanted to share a logo redesign that I actually was a part of. I took a logo that was previously designed and redesigned it based on what I believed was a more updated logo for this particular company called Collective Tattoo and Gallery. This is a real company in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I redesigned this logo from their original logo, and I actually don't have the original logo to show you, but this is my brand manual. This is what a brand manual looks like. So again, if you redesign a logo or create a logo, this is something that you might want to also tell your client that you can also do for them if they have the budget and means. Brand manual is basically the do's and don'ts once you do redesign a logo or design one, so that if anybody else works with this same company, say another designer does different materials for them, that they are going back to the design manual here so that the logo is applied effectively in different applications. So it's a way to keep it consistent. So this is the brand manual. This is the table of contents. And some of these pages I'm just going to quickly peruse through here because there are 63 pages. But I did design the manual as well. It shows the intro, artwork, mission, and vision and values. This is typically what you would show. A brand manual can be a couple pages. It doesn't have to be 63 pages like I show here. It can be very simple too. It's going to show the brand mark. It's going to show the brand components. So how the logo is used, how it should be used, color choices, typefaces that are used within there, so that people who may be placing other materials together are using that same typeface in regards to keeping the brand unified. Consider standard communication. So in here it shows business cards, referral cards, stationery, receipts. This is subjective based on the actual client and their needs. So this could change depending on, if they're a coffee shop, for instance, you would show, mugs and other materials there. Promotional merchandise, signage, promotional materials, and then the contact information. So if somebody another designer were applying the logo somehow and they had questions, they could revert and call and contact the designer responsible so that they can ask these questions. So typically in a brand manual, there's an introduction talking about what the brand is all about, what they do, artwork standards, so that here's the logo here, and what to do, what not to do. And this whole book is, not only is it showing how to use the logo, but it's actually also showing what the brand is about as well. So added imagery in here, quotes are kind of reinforcing what the brand is all about and who they are. Here's their mission statement, what their core values are, what their vision is, their values. This can be summed up very quickly too, but a mission statement's always great to show within a brand manual book. And then it goes right into the logo usage. So when you are done creating a logo, it's great to, like I said, have maybe 2 different variations. This is showing you the vertical variation of it, the clear space around it that needs to be followed. So, elements can't come too close near the logo itself, and then the smallest size that it can be it can be applied. So this is the vertical variation of this logo, and this is the horizontal. Remember, we just talked about showing 2 different variations. So this is the horizontal variation. And then it's showing what, the misuse of the logo, how not to apply it, and it's showing you visually and also verbally explaining. Don't rotate it, don't skew it, don't distort it. Don't move the mark away from being centered above, for instance. And if you're going to show the vertical, you have to also show the horizontal in the same way. Maybe some misuse of backgrounds so that you want to make sure that the logo is visible. So don't apply it to busy backgrounds. You wouldn't apply a darker logo on a darker background, and then the proper usage at the bottom is shown. Not only is it shown visually, but also a verbal explanation to the right of it, so that if there's any type of confusion as to what you're seeing, is being verbally told what you're seeing so that it's crystal clear what to do, what not to do. And that's the purpose of a brand manual. You have to be super crystal clear in what it is that you're showing. Here's the colors. Now, for this particular brand, it's very monochromatic. So this is showing you the black version and the gray version. This breaks down in CMYK, RGB, and also Pantone colors, so that whoever is applying this logo, if they need to print it, if they need to print Pantone colors, they know which one to use, and so on and so forth. Typeface is used, and this is not just within the logo itself, but explained, in other ways as well, in other communication, like say letterhead, stationery examples, what typeface is to use so that it's very unifying. Now we go into print and digital business cards specifications. Now this is why I think it's a great opportunity as a designer, if you're a freelance designer too, to gain more work. So say you redesign a logo or you design a logo from scratch, and that's all the client pretty much hired you to do. This is an extra project that you can promote to them and say, hey, I can do a brand manual for you. This is what your business cards would look like if you were to hire me as a designer. So it's kind of a nice way to not only gain more business, but also show the client, if they don't have business cards, what the logo would look like on a business card or stationery, for example. So this is just showing you print and digital business card specifications, where to put the logo, what the card size would be, paper color, ink use, resolution needed, paper type, very specific. This one's platinum metallic, showing you 80-pound paper, what the file format needs to be. It's 2-sided. It even goes down to the typeface choice and point size of the typeface, front and back. Digital kind of gives you the lowdown of what the digital specs would be for the business card. Referral cards. So again, this would be based on your client needs. It might not be needed for another business, but for this tattoo business, referral cards are often used. So this is what it would look like. And again, this is another piece where you can gain more work from your client if they were to want referral cards printed, showing you the card size, dimensions, the logo size that it needs to be, colors, resolution, paper, again, file format, typeface, two-sided. Then it goes into stationery, what the logo would look like if it was on stationery, the size of the letterhead, paper stock, color, typeface, etc. Receipts, even, just receipts that may be printed from the actual business itself, how that would be designed. Again, this is another project opportunity, but you can show how the logo is applied to that. Then I go into a gallery of collections, giving back to the community as far as their mission, just the proceeds going to other community nonprofit organizations out there, just showing you what they're part of. It's like linked to their mission statement. And then it goes into their graphic tees, merchandise, and how the logo would be applied to the actual merchandise. And not all brand manuals go into this much detail. This is just showing you a nice wide variety of applications. So this would be what it would look like on a white light shirt in the first row there, a darker shirt in the middle, and a gray shirt on the right. Now gray would be neutral color too. Doesn't necessarily have to be white, black, and gray. And again, the merchandise is very aligned to the actual brand. So these really cool, interesting stiletto designs. This is an option and where the label would be actually applied to this. Inside the shoe. Bikinis for the girls in the actual store. This is not just a tattoo shop. They actually have merchandise as well and an art gallery. So it's carrying through this theme. Skate decks are another merch, and how the logo would be applied to the skate decks itself to promote their brand consistently. Smartphone cases. So, you could have a lot of fun with thinking about what type of merchandise would be appropriate for your clients, and how much they can promote their brand on different merchandise. And then it goes into signage. So if this company were to ever want to franchise, this is a great way to have kind of like a do and don'ts and standards manual, so that if there was an opportunity to own another studio or tattoo gallery for this particular brand, they can say, here is how it needs to be in terms of keeping it cohesive, the brand cohesive, in terms of signage. Now, these are very specific CAD drawings, but this would be sent to any type of franchise opportunity buildings that would be having to follow the guidelines of where the signage would have to be, how it would look. Here's some post banners, how it would look, where the logo would be applied, keeping it cohesive. This is the actual tattoo place, that Collective Tattoo. This is their inside of their actual tattoo shop. I, obviously lived in Florida, so I was able to work alongside with this client and gain some photos. And what's nice about this, if you can actually get inside the company that you're designing for, you can obviously provide more specific signage information or whatever information that you need to show in your brand manual. This is basically showing you where some of the pieces can be shown. Here's a LCD display. The TV obviously can show and flip through. The brand is showing on there. Table tents and business cards can also be placed on top of the office desk. Promotional materials and contact information in the very back. This would be the contact to the designer that created this manual, so that if any questions were needed, they could definitely contact the designer and ask more details about it. But this is a great way to obviously keep your logo consistent on different materials.